Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commodore Scott Lockie. Today we commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Polygon Wood. In mid-1917, British Commander-in-Chief Field Marshal Sir Douglas Haig planned an offensive to break through the strongly fortified defences enclosing the Ypres salient, drive the Germans from the surrounding ridges and sweep through the German submarine bases on the Belgian coast. Operating as part of the British Second Army, the 1st and 2nd Australian Divisions had met with success at the Battle of Menin Road. With their ranks depleted due to casualties, they were replaced in the line by the 4th and 5th Australian Divisions as the next phase of the 3rd Battle of Ypres was put into motion. The Battle of Polygon Wood saw 9 British and Dominion divisions advancing over an 8.5-kilometre front. The assault was almost derailed by a German attack the day before the planned offensive, but after a near day-long fight, the German attack was stopped. The Australian 15th Brigade had played a pivotal role in this action, but had suffered heavy casualties. The following morning, only 1 battalion in the brigade was fit to attack. In the early hours of the 26th of September, 100 years ago today, a devastating artillery barrage heralded the commencement of the battle. The barrage was shielded, and advancing infantry was described by the official Australian war historian Charles Bean as the most perfect that ever protected Australian troops. It roared along like a Gippsland bushfire, with clouds of smoke and dust so thick the troops had to use compasses to maintain direction. There were delays as dogged German defenders were overcome, but by the end of the day, the Australians had taken their objectives and then held them against a determined counterattack. But the victory was not without cost. As with the Battle of Menin Road, casualties were high. The British and Empire troops suffered over 15,000 casualties, more than a third of which were Australians. Today, we remember all those who died in the Battle of Polygon Wood and whose names are recorded here on the Roll of Honour. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family members, visitors and students on behalf of the following schools. From the Northern Territory, Our Lady of Sacred Heart, Taramur. From South Australia, Trinity College, Blakeview Campus Primary School Department. From Tasmania, Launceston Church Grammar School, East Launceston, and Albura Street Primary School, Hobart. Australia's Federation Guard is a tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catapult party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. invite you to please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Students, you may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations over more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Second Lieutenant Henry Arundel, MM. Henry Arundel was born on the 27th of March 1876 in Osborne's Flat near Yakandanda, Victoria, to John and Catherine Arundel. Growing up in the nearby town of Gundowring and attending the local state school, he was known as an all-round sportsman who excelled in nearly every aspect of athletics. After studying at South Melbourne College, he became a teacher, working within the Victorian Education Department. Arundel's teaching duties saw him travel to numerous schools in the state. For a while, he was head teacher at Colac State School. But around 1902, he moved to Western Australia, and by the time the First World War began, he was living in Westonia. Arundel enlisted at Black Boy Hill Camp on the 23rd of August 1915. After initial training, he was allotted to the 12th Reinforcements to the 16th Battalion. On the 22nd of December, he left Fremantle aboard the transport ship Ajana, bound for Egypt. Shortly after arriving in Egypt, Arundel was hospitalised with mumps. He recovered quickly and was taken on strength of the 16th Battalion in early March. The following months were spent training as units of the newly raised 4th Australian Division were brought up to strength. The 16th Battalion sailed for France in June after a brief stint in the nursery sector, a relatively quiet part of the line near Armentières, where new units were familiarised with trench warfare. The battalion was sent south to the Somme. Arundel saw his first major action in August when his battalion joined the Battle of Pozières, which had begun in July. As a member of the battalion's scout platoon, Arundel accompanied his platoon commander into no man's land to conduct reconnaissance, gaining valuable intelligence which gave his commanding officer forewarning of a German counter-attack. During the battalion's own offensive action, Arundel was employed as a runner. According to his commanding officer, he displayed the greatest resource and courage in the execution of his duties. For his continuous bravery and courage under fire, he was awarded a military medal. After the battalion was withdrawn from the front line, Arundel was promoted to Lance Corporal. At the end of August, he returned to the front to attack German positions near Mouquet Farm. After some initial gains, strong German counterattacks and artillery fire forced the attackers to retire to their original positions. Having suffered heavy casualties, including many junior officers, the 16th Battalion was withdrawn to rest and reinforce. Arundel, who had repeatedly demonstrated his leadership qualities, was commissioned from the ranks as a second lieutenant on the 13th of September. The European winter of 1916 and 1917 was the coldest in living memory. As well as suspending major offensives, it affected troops stationed on the Western Front. On the 10th of December 1916, Arundel reported sick with a severe case of bronchitis. He was hospitalised and evacuated to England, and it took him months to recover. It was late April 1917 before he was well enough to rejoin his battalion. Arundel's reintroduction to fighting occurred in mid-June. Initially in reserve, the 16th Battalion took over frontline positions during the Battle of Messines and conducted a minor operation to extend and consolidate the Australian line. The next few months were mostly spent training, as the battalion did not move back to the front line until the 22nd of September, when they began preparing for the Battle of Polygon Wood. It is likely that the image of Arundel and the two comrades displayed this evening by the pool of reflection was taken in those days leading up to the battle. Much of the surrounding woodland had already been destroyed by huge quantities of shell fire as the area changed hands during earlier fighting. When the battle began in the early hours of the 26th of September, infantry advanced behind a heavy artillery barrage and secured most of their objectives without difficulty. Shell fire continued to fall, churning up the ground and destroying roads and lives. During the day, as Arundel was talking with some of his fellow officers, a German shell exploded nearby. One of Arundel's legs was badly shattered, a main artery was severed, and he died soon after. Initially buried where he fell, Henry Arundel's remains were later reinterred in a Tyne cot ceremony under a simple cross. He was 41 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among the more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed this evening beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Second Lieutenant Henry Arundel, MM, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.